Taoiseach, one of the major criticisms in your Housing Commission's damning report is government waste of money. The report says that this government has, and let me quote, by comparison with our European partners, one of the highest levels of public expenditure for housing, yet one of the poorest outcomes. You have to ask yourself why that is. Well, it's because you decided to pass the state's responsibility for housing people to private landlords. Last week, I raised the €3 billion you're forking over to wealthy property funds to lease homes that neither the state nor the tenants will ever own. In one case, you're coughing up close to €1 million, leasing one property in Dublin that goes back to the fund after 25 years. It's incredible incompetence, but there is even worse. Fine Gael came to office in 2011, and since then you've put nearly €10 billion of public money into the pockets of private landlords. You've done this through subsidies such as HAP, RAS, rent allowance and long-term leasing. €10 billion. That money could have been used, should have been used, to build tens of thousands of permanent homes for ordinary people. But instead, you pay out €10 billion to keep workers and families in the private rental sector with very, very little housing security. Housing supports are necessary, but they must be short-term and temporary, not a never-ending bill for the taxpayer. You've turned what's supposed to be a temporary short-term support into indefinite, uncertain, insecure situations for so many people. You should know as well as I do what life is like for people on HAP. They talk about their rip-off rent leaving them with very little to pay other bills. They worry about being forced to move out with nowhere to go. The insecurity of their housing situation is always on their minds. It's stress, worry and constant uncertainty for the future. These workers and families should have the security of a permanent home. But of course you don't see your housing failures. Taoiseach, families forced to go without a permanent home see it. A generation locked out of affordable housing sees it, and young people paying extortionate rent see it, because they live with the consequences of your housing decisions every single day, and they have had enough. Enough of your rhetoric. They want delivery and they want real change in housing. Tá Fine Gael agus Fianna Fáil chur beagnach €10 billion darragad puibli I bócaí tíornaí talún príomháideacha. Ba ceart an targad sin a bheith úsáidte gur tithe phrais réasúnta atá tastáil ag daoine. Taoiseach, your Housing Commission has called for rental subsidies to be reformed to make them short-term, temporary supports. They have called for a huge ramping up in the delivery of social and affordable housing because workers and families need permanent roofs over their heads. Putting €10 billion into the pockets of private landlords doesn't get the job done, and that is the bottom line. Taoiseach, your approach to housing has failed. You're simply recycling the same policies that got us into this mess in the first place. So here's my question for you. How can you stand over spending €10 billion to keep tenants in insecure housing when that money could have been used to build tens of thousands of homes for workers and families?
Thank you, Deputy McDonald. Taoiseach, please.
Thanks very much, Corla. A couple of different aspects here. The Housing Commission report, which is referenced by the Deputy, and rental supports. So firstly, can I say that today the Government will publish the Housing Commission report, and in an effort to be helpful to the House and to informed debate on this, we'll also publish alongside that, or the Minister will publish alongside that, an initial assessment in terms of where we're at in relation to a number of the actions. I think that's a good thing to do in terms of allowing us to have an informed debate and discussion. What I can tell you is this: I think you will see a number of recommendations already underway. And I think it's also important to say this, because the Housing Commission has been referenced a lot in the last 24 hours. It's important to remind ourselves of what it was asked to do. It was asked the Commission will consider long-term housing policy post-2030 and examine how to build on the policy changes outlined in Housing for All and related government policies. The idea was to get a long-term housing approach. Where do we want to get to from post-2030 to 2050? What does housing policy need to look like? What areas of reset are required? And that bit's been missed from any analysis or commentary so far today. There's definitely some good ideas in the Housing Commission report. There's also some challenging ones, Deputy, that I think you'll find challenging, I think we'll find challenging. I think there'll be a legitimate debate around them. Issues around reference rents. Could that actually see people's rents be higher than in rent pressure zones? Just because it works in one European country, how would it work in an Irish context? Issues around incentivising landlords to have a viable rental sector. Do you believe that's a good idea? Is it a good idea? Let's debate those issues as well. Diverse funding, yes, there's a need for exchequer funding, but also an acknowledgement that there's a need for more than just exchequer funding. Also, you'll see disagreements and different points of view even amongst members of the Commission on a number of the recommendations. So this is a report that I think won't just be challenging for government, and it's good to be challenged, by the way, on the biggest societal issue we face, but I think it'll be challenging for opposition, it'll be challenging for policymakers. So let's publish the report, let's have an opportunity to scrutinise it, and let's take it from there. But of course, while all of this is going on today, and this is very useful and very helpful, and I thank the Commission for their work, there's people who need help in the here and now. And that's why I want people at home to know that every single working day in Ireland so far this year, 337 homes have commenced construction. That every single week, almost 500 people have drawn down their mortgage for their first home. That last year we saw the largest number of social homes provided since the 1970s. And that this is what the graph looks like when you talk about direct social house building in Ireland. This year, 2011, that gets referenced a lot, the year my party came into government, to right now in 2023. A very, very significant increase by any objective or fair analysis. In relation to rental supports, I mean, you have a point in relation to the wanting to move people from rental supports into secure tenure, and I agree in relation to that, and that's why we need to continue to build more social homes, more affordable homes, more cost rental. I get that point. What I think is disingenuous, and I say it respectfully, is to talk about the €10 billion figure that you are today, because you know well, Deputy, that of that 10 billion figure, 3.2 billion of it went on rent supplement, 1.8 billion of it went on what we call the RAS scheme, 3.5 billion of it went on the housing assistance payment. And every single year, you could paper the walls of Dáil Éireann with press releases and statements from Sinn Féin TDs asking us to increase the limits and asking us to spend more. No, you can, Deputy O'Brien, including yourself. I have one here. So I know you do, so just be very careful what you tell me you don't do, because I have it here. So just to be clear on this, you've asked us to spend more than €10 billion on these supports, because you know why? In an emergency, whilst you're ramping up housing supply, you have to do something in the here and now. You say landlords, I say renters. You say 10 billion given to landlords, I say 10 billion given in rental support to people who come into your constituency offices and come into mine looking for assistance. And it is news to me that you believe the money on rent supplement, on RAS and housing assistance payment is not money well spent at a time when the country had no money. Because remember in 2011, when my party came to government, it was your party's position, when Jerry was in charge, send the IMF home and tell them to take their money with them.
Mary McDonald.
So the point here is that your Housing Commission report is damning. It's not neutral in its assessment of your performance. It's damning in stating very clearly your failures, and one of them, it's just one, but an important one that they identify, is the fact that you have made what should be a temporary, short-term support a permanent feature in the lives of so many. And you haven't disputed my figure. It's 10 billion since 2011. That's a lot of public money. That's a lot of potential bricks and mortar. That's a lot of permanent homes that ought to have been built. That's the point here. I've asked you, and let me put the question again, how do you stand over that? That is a clear measure of your failure. And let me tell you, people who come to anyone's office who are on HAP or who are seeking HAP are never filled with joy at that prospect. People who are on HAP are in the main pretty miserable and universally frantic with worry as regards these matters. Count Corla, as it happens, only the other evening I was talking to one young mother who's on HAP, 2 small children, 2 beautiful children. Her rent is €2,500 and she doesn't have a decent night's sleep. That's what her housing situation is. You have spent 10 billion keeping people in that situation that ought to have been spent on building affordable and social homes, but of course that's not the Fine Gael way.
Oh, that's a great line, but unfortunately the graph shows you're wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Look at the increase in social house building since my party came to office. You are yet again wrong. No, seriously.
Deputy O'Brien.
If a contest in fluency and verbosity was an Olympic sport, you'd win a gold medal, but it doesn't build houses. We're not afraid to take more radical steps when it comes to housing. That's why we asked the Housing Commission to come up with ideas. How do you build a sustainable model that doesn't have boom and bust, that doesn't have ghost estates one year and no housing supply the next? That's what we're doing. But you ask, how can we stand over €10 billion? Because you know what? There was a political consensus in this House that we needed to take steps to help people in the here and now, and you led the charge. Deputy Desi Ellis, RAS has provided many people with housing and allowed them to dig their way out of the poverty trap. You're now criticising the expenditure today on what a Sinn Féin TD calls a scheme that helped people dig their way out of the poverty trap. Your legislation that you proposed to make sure people could get their HAP applications processed quicker, calling on the Minister for Housing to increase the housing payments. Silent community must increase as well. So let me tell you this, it's 153 days since you, Deputy Mary Lou McDonald, told the people of this country that you'd provide homes for 300,000 in Dublin. Same question I ask you every day. How? Please tell us.
How are you going
How?
to do it?
How?
How?
Go and read it on the website. Read it on the website.
Deputy O'Brien, it's beneath you to keep distracting the House in this matter. It is beneath you, sir. Deputy Holly Kearns, please.